Good morning. Welcome to worship here at Highlands this morning. We're delighted that you are with us this morning. If you are new and visiting, welcome. I hope you feel like you belong to this place because you do. If you are joining us on live stream, wherever that might be around the world, we welcome you as well. And we greet Bee in the Cusp and Bill and Denise in Suffolk, England, and Neil and Sylvia in Ottawa, and Andrea, and maybe Steve and Ben in Farnham, England, and others in our neighborhood who don't get out to church but can join us on live stream. We're delighted that you've chosen to be with us this morning. As we begin worship, we gather here and are reminded that we do so on the unceded lands of the Coast Salish people and the traditional territories of the Squamish and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. So, you made your way here, avoiding the car show that's in the middle of the village, which is a wonderful thing. It hasn't been here for a few years, so I know you're excited to get there, so we'll try to keep this service as short as possible. You must make sure that you go down and see Pete Van Drimlin's 1956 brand new Plymouth that sits down near Queens at the end of the village. He's had that car since he was 11 years old. So make sure you take a look at that beauty. So the highlights this week are slim, as you have seen, but you know that they will expand greatly as we move into September. It's hard to imagine that summer is beginning to wind down. It's a sad thing. But it's always exciting when fall comes around and September rolls around because everything starts up again here at Highlands and all the prodigals return from wherever they have been throughout the summer. And we have our Welcome Back Sunday on the 8th of September. And that's followed by our world-famous barbecue. So just start working on your appetites now. Plan to be there for that. And we're really excited that Andrea, who I mentioned earlier, Andrea Irwin, is returning from England tomorrow. And she will be here preaching in this service next Sunday morning. So make sure, if you can, to be here for that. And Sandy, her mom, will be with her as well. I will be away because some of us are going to a wedding of Pam Pollock's over on Vancouver Island, and we're really excited about that. So lots happening in the life of the church. And on top of that, we want to give a greeting and a birthday wish to Bernice Lill, who had her 80th birthday on Friday. And that's a wonderful milestone. And happy birthday, Bernice. And the love that we give to you extends from all our friends that are now in Guatemala. Will sent me an email early this morning knowing that I would be up early this morning finishing off what I do here. And so he sends a greeting from the group that's down there. They're in the village of Panchachal in Guatemala. And he says, our Highlands contingent send prayers of gratitude and care for this church community. And of course, we send our prayers back to them as well. They're having a remarkable experience, as we knew they would. And in Will's words, it's beautiful, intense, lovely, and powerful days. So our blessings are with them as well as they continue their time down there. Yesterday we had a wonderful service of celebration, a celebration of life of young Namkung, who you will remember was one of our wonderful greeters with this electric smile, and greeted you often at the front door along with his wife, Sunny Park. And Young died recently, and we are greatly saddened by that. We will miss him terribly. But we had a great service for him yesterday, and these flowers are in memory of him. And these flowers here were sent from the Korean United Church in Burnaby. I also wanted to welcome Danny Choi, who's at the piano this morning. Jordy is away, and so Danny is here with us, and we're delighted by that. Danny is a former student of Francis Roberts at Argyle Secondary School, and he's in his fourth year of music composition studies at UBC, And he plays, and he'll be playing later today, he plays as the accompanist for the Korean Methodist United Church, which worships at Lynn Valley United Church on Sunday afternoons. Danny, take it away here. So, our worship begins. So let's just take a moment and breathe deeply so that we can feel that we are in the presence of God who gathers us in. Stories of our faith from ancient days through modern times are filled with faith-filled people. People who have trusted in God and persevered through the most challenging things life can offer. Martyrs and military leaders, prophets and kings, women and men, ordinary folk just like you and me. People whose faith in the goodness of God allowed them to do ordinary and extraordinary things. We are part of that parade of followers, and the light of Christ around which we gather each Sunday morning reminds us of the one whose path we follow. So now, together, let us sing, Morning Has Broken. Would you please join me as we say together our opening prayer? Loving God, as you gather us in for worship this day, we are reminded that there is a cloud of witnesses who have gone before us, who have run the race, who still watch over us, and who encourage us to be faithful to your ways of being in this world, the ways that Jesus taught. ask that you will bless all that we offer in this time of worship. Our songs, our prayers, our words, our gifts, and the ponderings of all our hearts. We pray this in Jesus' name.
Sustain us like a star-studded sky. Your spirit shines o'er us, renewing our spirits with courage and faith. Like a bird in free flight, your windows around us, like a wind in the forest that breathes life upon us, like a phoenix that's rising from ashes round us, renewing our spirits with vision and grace. You promise to guide us like a bright fiery bush. You come to speak to us like the calm cooling breeze. Your spirit breathes in us, renewing our spirits with loving embrace. Your spirit revives us like a song of the soul. You come to be with us like a prayer of the heart. You heal and restore us, renewing our spirits, the future to face.
Good morning. I found a bit of background for this text this morning, which I found a little bit helpful, and you might too. Hopefully Ken will explain it later. Our culture tells us that we are either successes or failures, but the writer of Hebrews mixes the categories because our lot in life is not a means of our faithfulness. The intermingled categories are a word of encouragement for struggling Christians. If we're struggling and someone tells us that the true mark of faithfulness is suffering, we might despair. If we are struggling and someone tells us the true mark of faithfulness is triumph and victory, what hope is there? But the mixing of suffering and triumph gives us a word of hope. Faithfulness shines in both suffering and in triumph, both in sorrow and in joy. So this is from Hebrews 11, the faith of other Israelite heroes. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as if it were dry land. But when the Egyptians attempted to do so, they were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell after they had been encircled for 7 days. By faith, Rahab, the prostitute, did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had received the spies in peace. And what more should I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, shut the mouths of lions, quenched raging fire, escaped the edge of the sword, won strength out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. Women received their dead by resurrection. Others suffered mocking and flogging, and even chains and imprisonment. They were stoned to death. They were sawn in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in skins of sheep and goats. destitute, persecuted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains, and in caves and in holes in the ground. Yet all these, though they were commended for their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better, so that they would not, without us, be made perfect. And the example of Jesus. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Thanks be to God.
Thanks, Tanis, for that. And thanks for that helpful introduction. Now it makes sense. So, the denouement of this story, that's one of the few words that's left in my limited French vocabulary. It means the ending. The denouement of the story triggered a high school memory for me. And it's scary to think how long ago that was. Those of us that played on the various sports teams, that being basketball and volleyball and track and field, etc., in those early years at Handsworth Secondary, also had to run cross country. I suppose it was good for our fitness, but I think that was the only way our coach could actually field a cross country team. I determined fairly on that I was not a great cross country runner, but I was pretty competitive. So when running, I just tucked myself in behind the two guys who were good, and I focused on their heels and I ran, following them as closely as I could. Now, I never beat Lori or Pat, but I almost always finished relatively close behind them. I think the writer of this letter to the Hebrews was suggesting a similar plan. No matter what race you or I might be running in this life, there is someone who has run it before us, and that person is the one who we should follow. Would you take a moment to pray with me? Holy One, be with us this morning as we find our way into this story, seeking the truth that we might find there. And we pray that the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts, the actions of our lives will continue to encourage us to follow the one you sent to show us the way. Amen. How often do you look through your family albums? It's fun to look back on pictures, many taken so long ago, of people and events that have helped shape your life. Parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts and uncles, family, friends. Sometimes there are photos of people that you have never met, but you know they are a part of your family history. They are a part of what makes you, you. Some might be seeking a birth family that they have never known. Some of us are more intentional and are searching through online vehicles such as Ancestry.com and others to connect themselves with centuries of family history. I haven't done that yet, but it's on my now retired to-do list. I think we do this because we want to know where we have come from, to find out whose lives are connected to ours, and maybe to get a sense of who might still be cheering us on. As I thought about this, I remembered a couple of coincidental experiences I had during the year I was taking my lay licensed worship leadership courses in Alberta. 5 of the 6 weekend courses were at Gates United Church in Red Deer, Alberta. As I walked into the church on that first Saturday morning, I was a little apprehensive about being there. a little unsure if I was doing the right thing. Later that day, I found out that this was the church that my dad's sister and husband, my Aunt Marge and Uncle Don, had attended for most of the years of their life. And where my cousin Lorraine, who I stayed with when I was in Red Deer, had been married. Then the final weekend of my course was held at St. Stephen's College at the University of Alberta in Edmonton. And as I walked up the stairwell, I saw two very large portraits of past principals of the college, one of which looked down at me. And that was a picture of my mom's uncle, my great-uncle, the very Reverend Aubrey Tuttle, who was the moderator of the United Church of Canada from 1947 to 1949. So with these two disconnected but unlikely coincidences, it seemed like from both sides of my family, I was being encouraged. I was being cheered on to keep doing what I was doing. That is what the writer of the letter to the Hebrews was doing. Now, biblical scholars don't know who wrote this letter. It was originally attributed to the Apostle Paul, but it was likely written some years later by an unknown disciple of Paul's. Whoever it was, they were writing to a small, struggling, early Christian community who seemed to be faltering in their faith. Theirs was not an easy existence. They were persecuted by Roman authorities, shunned by their former Jewish community, pressured by the Jewish leadership to return to the fold. And it was hard for them to hold on to this new way of being, to still feel like they belong, to keep their faith. And so the writer sends them this letter of encouragement. And in effect, he's telling them, yes, this is hard, but you're not alone. So many have gone before you and kept the faith. And so can you. You too can and must stay in the race. And so the writer unfolds a cloud of witnesses, heroes of the faith who had gone before, men and women who, in the face of great trials, clung steadfastly to God's promises, laying a path for others to follow. Now, earlier in the letter, the writer reaches into the past to retell the stories of Abraham and Sarah and Moses and the faith that carried them through the many challenges that they faced. And in today's passage, the writer offers an eclectic list of heroes who kept the faith and performed remarkable deeds in the name of their God. Now, if you want to know their stories, then you'll need to dig out your Old Testaments and read the books of Joshua and Judges, and maybe also 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings. Unless, of course, you've already read those. It's a wild and violent ride through a time when the Hebrew people finally crossed the Jordan and into the Promised Land, brutally taking the land from the pagans who lived there. You know, it's not an easy read. These are imperfect people living in imperfect times, trying to create a home where they can live after 500 years of being landless, and create a place where they can worship their one true God, Yahweh. Despite the brutality and the massacres, the destruction, and the mayhem of this so-called holy war, God was still at work. God, no matter what the circumstances, is always at work. Eugene Peterson describes it this way: God's great love and purposes for us are worked out in the messes, in the storms and sins, in the blue skies, the daily work, and the dreams of our common lives, working with us as we are and not as we should be. Well, God was definitely working with what God had in this story. Did I say these were imperfect people? Rahab was a prostitute in the city of Jericho who hid Joshua's spies as they sought out weaknesses in the city's defenses. She was, it would seem, a traitor to her own people, but also a hero who saved her own family from death, and she was a new convert to the Israel's God. Gideon was a reluctant warrior who questioned his own abilities and continually asked for proof that it was God who was actually talking to him and telling him to go. Barak refused to go into battle unless Deborah was at his side. Now that seems okay today, but probably was a little strange in his time, even knowing that the glory would go to the woman. He was a man ahead of his time. Samson was strong, really strong. We know that story, but not very bright, it would seem. He was tricked by Delilah, the Philistine woman he married, to let her know the source of his strength, which of course was his hair, and then she cut it. He dies in the end, but so do most of the bad guys. But it probably didn't have to end that way. Jephthah, another great warrior, unwittingly and tragically offered to his daughter as a sacrifice to win a military victory. David, the poet warrior, became the beloved king of Israel. Yet, he seduced a married woman, Bathsheba, and sent her husband to the front lines where he would be killed. Yes, they're all imperfect, and they're all very human. That's the wonder of these biblical stories. They aren't whitewashed. People are shown with all their warts and all their, yes, something's missing here. But they're relatable. They are relatable for people like you and me, with people like you and me. And God works with them, because God works with all of us. The writer then goes on to tell the mighty deeds of faith and good works performed by unnamed heroes, toppling kingdoms, bringing justice, winning battles, routing enemy armies, but also tales of great suffering endured by many for their faith, abuse, whips, chains, imprisonment, even death. Through all of this, the triumphs and the tragedies, these imperfect servants of God remained faithful. I found it interesting that all the heroes lifted up by the writers are from the Hebrew people's ancient stories. It doesn't mention Peter or Paul, James or John, Thomas or Stephen, or any of the other disciples or followers of Jesus. I think this might be to remind the community that they are still connected to their past, where their roots run deep. That following Jesus doesn't mean they need to let go of the Holy Scriptures that have always been a part of their lives. These ancient stories, these people, are still part of the family album. They are some of the people who brought this fledgling Christian community to where they are today. The writer then uses the metaphor of a race that we are all in. The ancient heroes, the struggling first century church, and each one of us. It's an unfinished race that stretches back through time and forward into the unknown future. The writer sets this remarkable image of the long arc of salvation history that includes all of us and relies on all of us. Eugene Peterson's version of this passage in the Message speaks of it this way. None of these people, even though their lives of faith were exemplary, got their hands on what was promised. God had a better plan, that their faith and our faith would come together to make one completed whole. Their lives not complete apart from our lives. From ancient days through these modern times, we people of faith are all in this race together. Whether we're warming up or running mile after mile, or cooling down or just cheering others on. Each of us, with all our failures, all our successes, we are dependent on the other. We are unable to do it alone. What we do matters, not just to us and our community in this day, but to those who have gone before us, those who have run the race and are now left to cheer us on. And it also matters to those who follow us. For we will have added our stories to those of the ancient ones, weaving together a picture that is so much greater than our own. Reverend Catherine Matthews Huey adds, as we hunger and thirst in this day for the coming of God's reign, for God's shalom, for God's peace and healing in the world, in places close to us like our homes and our families and our neighborhoods, and in places far away like Syria and Iraq, Sudan, Hong Kong, Kashmir, and Guatemala. We know that the race we run is long and hard, that wholeness is so often a faraway place. So much of the time, peace and justice are things unseen. The writer of Hebrews knows that, saying earlier in this letter, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the convictions of things unseen. We are used to seeing results, getting immediate feedback for our efforts. But the author is saying something different. I find the words of David most helpful. Faith is holding on to something that has only been promised, but not yet fulfilled. Trusting that something will happen even though it hasn't happened yet. Faith understood this way takes equal measures of imagination and courage. Imagination to envision the promise, and the courage to act as if it will be kept, even as we wait. So we run the race as best we can, trusting that there is a cloud of witnesses cheering us on. As the author of this letter did, we can look into our sacred stories to recall some of these witnesses. We can also remember some of the heroes of this era who ran the race and kept the faith in such difficult times. People like Martin Luther King, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Mother Teresa, Dorothy Day, and so many more. And we can look through our Highlands archives and our pictorial directory to remember the saints of this church who have gone before us and whose lives and efforts and faith are eternally connected to ours. And God's gift to us is that he sent one who has run the race before us. One who is always with us as we run ours. When we falter and feel like we can't finish the race, we are reminded to look to Jesus, to tuck in behind him, for he is the pioneer. He is the trailblazer. He is the one who is tested in every way right up to the cross and into the joy of life beyond death. We are not alone. We are never alone. As Will said a few weeks ago, your soul is cheering you on. As the writer of this letter to the Hebrews says, we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, cheering us and encouraging us. And so, we run.
The dream and you the dreamer. I am the song and you are the rhyme. You are the tune sung in every silence. You are the now in the endless stream of time. which I lose my trail. You are the word and I the echo. You are the leader and I am the led. You are the joy and I the laughter. You are the rock on which I lay my head.
This race we run is long and challenging, but we can do it because we run it together. We are a community that worships and works and plays together. And so too we share our resources, giving as generously as we can so that God's dream for this world can unfold as it should. So now your offering will be received.
What does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? Justice, kindness, walk humbly with your God. To seek justice and love kindness and walk humbly with your God.
Please join me as we say together our prayer of dedication. Gracious God, these offerings we present are a piece of who we are, from the work of our hands, hearts, and minds, from the blessings we have been given. We gratefully offer these gifts to you. We trust that they will be used to bring goodness to a world in need. Bless us, we pray, as we follow the one who shows us the way.
Let us take a moment to quiet our minds and open our hearts and our spirits as we gather in prayer. Gracious God, we thank you for your abundant gifts this day, the sunshine, the flowers, and the lazy days of summer. We are grateful for all you have created in this world, and you challenge us to care for your creation. You call us to be the church, Christ's body in the world, and we know we fall short and acknowledge that we need to do more, as you have asked us to go make a difference. In a world that continues to explode in violence and hate, you are present, seeking peace. In cities being terrorized by crime, you are present, seeking justice. And in a home or church divided by conflict, you are present, seeking reconciliation. And when we are tested in ways we have not experienced before, you are present with us. Loving God, we pray for the faithful all over the world, that all who love you might, by your grace and wisdom, unite in service to your world. We pray also for the leaders of nations, that their decisions be spoken with truth and justice, and that they may know the hope of your faithfulness in the world. Generous and loving God, we pray for our community as it grows in ways we have never anticipated. Help us see the opportunities as well as the obstacles of ongoing development. We seek your grace as our neighbors with gifts and skills gather in dialogue to share ideas and visions with one another as they seek to create a community of welcome, justice, and inclusion. We pray for our own community of Highlands as we move into a very busy fall season with programs and activities abounding. We ask your Spirit to be with us as we welcome our children, seniors, newcomers, and long-timers into a faith-filled, inclusive place where we live, grow, and thrive together. God of compassion, we remember those who are struggling this day, those close to our hearts, those we learn of in the news, those we pass on the street but do not know, our friends sitting beside us today. Be with each of them. We pray for all those who are suffering from pain, illness, loneliness, loss, or anxiety. May they receive your strength and courage. May your healing presence gently transform the places where we hold pain, and may your loving presence be among us as we offer support and comfort to those in need. Loving God, we now lift up to you the names and places on our prayer list that are on our hearts today. We pray for the members and staff of Highlands United Church traveling in Guatemala. May they be a blessing to those they meet, sowing seeds of hope and justice. We lift up Bud and Maud, Sonny and family, Michael, Jean, Barb, Nikki, Jack, Karen. May your love surround Elizabeth, Jean and Peter, Jordan, a young girl struggling with cancer, Bernie, Lorraine and family, Wilma, Amber, Madeline, Barry. Send your blessing upon Heather and Vern, Carolyn and family, Danny and family, Cecile and Ralph, Gordon and Glenna, Jenna and Chris, Robin and family. We lift up the Artisana Collective and Sandra, Andrea, Myra and Myrna, Max, Al and Bernice, Denny, Ken. We bring all of our prayers together in the strength of the Spirit and run with perseverance the race that is set before us. And now we sing together the prayer that Jesus left for the church.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it this day our daily bread. Forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial, and deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. One more step along the world I go, one more step along the world I go, from the old things to the new. Keep me traveling along with you, and it's from the old I travel to the new. Keep me traveling along with you. Round the corner of the world I turn, more and more about the world I learn. All the old things that I see, you'll be tracking that along with me. And it's from the old I travel to the new. Keep me traveling along with you. As I travel through the bad and good, keep me traveling the way I should. Where I see no way to go, you'll be telling me the way I know. And it's from the old I travel to the new. Keep me traveling along with you. Give me courage when the world is rough. Keep me traveling when the world is tough. Leap and sing in all I do. Keep me traveling along with you. And it's from the old I travel to the new. Keep me traveling along with you. You are older than the world can be. You are younger than the life in me. Ever old and ever new. Keep me traveling along with you. And it's from the old I travel to the new. Keep me traveling along with you.
Thank you for being here this morning. Know that whatever race that you're in, whatever journey that you are on, you are not alone. That God is present with you every step that you take. So go from this place out into this day, out into whatever race that you are on, and be present, knowing that you are God's presence in the world. Go there in peace. Amen.
Till we gather again, God be with you. Till we gather again, God be with you. May God bless you with love, bless you with kindness, keep you in perfect peace. God be with you till we meet again. Till we gather again, God be with you. Till